Welcome back, hosers. Today I would like to use this opportunity to talk about planting and caring for subtropical trees in pots in cold climates. Because right here, where I live right now, I'm in zone 6 and I'm in a beautiful mountain valley that, well, in a couple of days it's going to be too cold for this tree and I'm going to have to take it inside because the temperature is going to drop below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which, given that it's late June, is a little bit startling for me. I'm still adjusting. But it is possible to grow Meyer lemons and avocado trees in zone 6 if you're willing to cart them in and out to deal with the temperature. So this lemon tree has been living with me for going on 5 years now. She produces delicious Meyer lemons, so you can eat the lemons kind of like an orange almost. They're still, they're lemons, but they're not quite as assertively bitter as, more bitter lemons. I don't know, I think my big fat head was blocking the view of this nice lemon right here that is maturing up. So usually with my lemon tree, I've noticed that I'll have full bloom around Thanksgiving, so after I've moved her inside, and then she will start giving me lemons. The lemons will also be ripening around that time, so there's kind of a cycle. But also, this has been the first time in a while that I haven't actually seen lemons, flowers on the tree. Meyer lemons are almost perpetually flowering and setting fruit. So I do have different ages of lemons. So here's a smaller one right here. And over on this branch, if you can see it, I've got some that just started. The flowers just got pollinated and dropped off. And I'm going to have to thin those down to 1 or 2 per spur so that I don't overcrowd my branches and weigh them down excessively. Today, I'm not going to show you how to pot up a Meyer lemon tree because I've already done that, and I don't want to repot this tree and traumatize her while she's in the middle of setting all this fruit. However, I just got, it's still in the box, an avocado tree, and I'm going to be going through how I like to set up my avocado trees for indoor-outdoor growing, because avocado trees have a lot of the same needs that lemon trees do. They can't freeze, they need well-draining soil. So I'm going to use the same soil from my avocado tree. I'm going to use a similarly sized pot. And so it all should be similar enough that anything you can apply to one will apply to the other. So let's get started. Not all of this is necessary, but I do want to show it to you before we begin assembly. You will be happier if you put your tree on wheels, because a tree, this is going to blow your mind, is heavy. And you're also going to want something to catch water drippings. So this fits nicely on my wheeled trolley because I planned it that way. And you're going to want a very large pot because you are potting up a tree. It is possible to start your tree in a smaller pot, but my philosophy is I'm going to disturb it a little bit less if it just starts out in the pot it's going to wind up in. So here is my big giant pot. And then I'm going to want to use a soil mix. I know a lot of people don't like Miracle-Gro, so don't use it if you don't like it. But you want to use something that's for cactus or citrus soil. So it's going to drain really, really well. And before I unbox my tree, I'm going to throw some of this mix in to the pot because it's not going to come in a pot this deep, and I want the tree to sit in the soil so that its root flare is exposed. Otherwise it will get sick and possibly die. Now normally I would recommend getting your trees at a local nursery because local nurseries will carry trees that will do well in your area. However, I'm explicitly growing a tree here that will not do well in my area on purpose, which means that probably my local nursery wouldn't have it. Big box stores often have trees that won't do well in your neighborhood. like I often see Meyer lemons at my local big box store. However, because these are trees that have special watering requirements and big box store employees are not professional horticulturalists and don't know how to water these trees, you'll often get them with root damage from being overwatered or underwatered. So what I do, even though I would normally say don't do this, is I order my trees online that are not for my climate. And this tree I got from fastgrowingtrees.com. Hey, fastgrowingtrees.com, you should be my sponsor. But this is from them. My Meyer lemon tree that I'm very happy with also came from them, which is why I bought another tree from them. I've been generally happy with the quality of my trees I get through them. Now, as you open your tree, you should expect to see some damage because, well, it's been in a box and it's been shipped. So if I pull this out and it's got a little damage, it's probably fine. It doesn't mean fast-growing trees are monsters or anything. Keep that in mind. And up we come. Here is my avocado tree. This is a really mature tree. I'm super happy with how it looks. And it comes in a pot. And I found that Fast Growing Trees does a pretty good job packaging their pots so that you don't end up with a box full of soil and bare roots. So good job, Fast Growing Trees. Now that I have my hardy avocado liberated from its packaging, I'm going to want to just kind of eyeball the fit here and make sure it's going to sit down at the level in the soil where I want it. Let's lift this up and see. Ooh, this is really loose soil. I don't know if I'm going to have a lot of it come out with the root ball. So you can see the roots were not crowded, which is fine. And there's my flare right there. So this is a grafted tree. You can see the graft here. Never, ever bury the graft, but also you want to find the root flare, and that's actually where you want your soil level to be. The root flare on this is a few inches below the graft. Now, as I top this off, I'm going to want to have an eye on the tree so that I fill it so that it's going to look good, because if it looks good, you'll feel good. And that's important too, right? And I like to do kind of a pulling up motion as I put it in the pot, because that will allow the lower roots to kind of extend and the soil to embrace them. This looks good. And let's talk about fertilizer. You should fertilize your fruit trees. They're fruit trees. Fruits take a lot of energy to grow. I have tried using on my citrus tree. I've tried the organic fertilizer, I've tried the pelletized fertilizer, and I've tried just top dressing with a nice thick layer of compost, and they've all worked for me. So whatever the ideal fertilizer is, you should go with what you have on hand and what you can afford. So for instance, I'm going to be using my citrus fertilizer on this tree because my expectation is that it's going to have very similar nutritional needs, because that lemon cranks out a lot of fruit. So I know that I've already got a fertilizer that supports a tree that cranks out a lot of fruit. And I'm just going to use the same fertilizer on both trees. If you keep it simple, you're more likely to follow through. Well, I am super excited. This is much bigger than the lemon tree was when I got it. I should see fruit on this tree within the next year or two. And this is a self-fertile variety. Let's see, what is it called? They just call it a cold hardy avocado. Now, cold hardy doesn't mean that it's going to freeze okay. You're going to want to take this inside So during your first year, you don't want the temperature to drop below about 45, ever. So if it starts to get colder than that, pull it inside. So in a couple of nights, when my temperature drops below that, we're gonna have a sleepover. But after that, you can probably let it get as cold at night as 35 once it's gotten established in its pot. You never ever want to let these freeze though. They are a subtropical tree. Now you might have noticed when I was filling this pot with potting soil that I did not put gravel or anything else in the bottom to improve drainage. And that is because it doesn't improve drainage. I grew up thinking the same thing. So if you're like, nah, it does. I believed it my whole life. Hey, me too. But also, I really like science. So when I get some data that helps me understand that things don't work the way I always thought they did, well, it's time to change my mind. I hope you can be that way too. So the thing about water, when it's in a medium like soil, is that whenever the density of that medium changes, that stops the water, because water has surface tension, so it sticks to itself really well. So as it's sliding down through the soil, it's holding on to itself, it's wrapping around the soil particles. If it hits a gap, now our imagination of that situation is that it's going to hit the gap and it's going to pour through like it's a coffee filter. But really what's going to happen, because this is good soil that holds on to water for us, it's going to hit that gap, and then the surface tension is going to hold it above the gap. So if you've got gravel or pottery shards or whatever down at the bottom of your pot, the water is stopping at the top of that, which means it's going to be stopping draining closer to your roots, and you're more likely to get waterlogged roots that way. So it's a little counterintuitive, but it's just the way it is. Now let's take a moment to talk about watering in your tree. This is relatively dry potting mix, so I'm going to want to hit it twice at the shower setting. So this first time is just to begin to wet the soil. And then I'm going to let this soak in for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, because the components of potting soil can take a little while to get wet enough to absorb water well. And then once I have pre-wetted the soil, I'm going to go in again for a deeper drink. Both Meyer lemons and hardy avocados are going to need to get pretty dry in between waterings. So while they're outside, I don't worry about it so much, because I live in a very dry climate and they tend to dry out pretty quickly. So I'll just water them every 2 or 3 days, depending on the temperature, while they're outside. But while they're inside, I want to put my whole finger, I'm not going to do that right now, it's muddy, but I want to put my whole finger down in there, and just, if the tip of my finger doesn't feel moisture, then I'll water. So you're going to want to let them get pretty dry in between waterings so that you don't get root rot. Once you have potted up your avocado and you provide it a situation that gets full sun, you should expect to have your avocado for at least the next 50 to 80 years if all goes well. So it's a rest of your life kind of tree if you're lucky. And thanks for watching along. I hope you've had a great time in my garden and that you have a wonderful time in your own.